Hey everyone, and thank you for tuning in and welcome back to the Ghost Biker Garage. We didn't get to go on live last week because if you've been following my channel, you'll know that I've been having some issues with Facebook restricting my account. So I'm happy to announce now that all the restrictions have been lifted. Everything's a go. So we're full throttle ahead and excited about bringing you more of these shows with some really great guests and talking about some really cool things in the paranormal that's coming up, as well as some interesting things that in events that we'll be having here real soon. So tonight I have a very special guest. He was on my New Year's Eve show with several other folks, and he's got some great stories to share, as well as just some, great conversation. So if you all same as before, want to add comments here into the live stream, we'll pull those up on the screen. So get those together for my guest. Let me go ahead and pull him on here. Hey, Joe. I've got Joe from 222 Paranormal. He's the co-host of 222 Paranormal podcast, and we've got a good show planned tonight. How are you, Joe?
I'm doing good. Doing real good.
Good. Thank you for coming on. I didn't know for sure if we were going to be able to do this with all the crazy stuff that Facebook's been doing. So I'm just so tickled to have you on.
Yeah, thanks for inviting me. This is awesome. Before I actually met you, I've watched a lot of your videos and that, and I was kind of fan geeking out the first day we met at the Phantom Fest. Down in Virginia, I believe it was.
Yes.
And, everybody was like, yeah, Miranda's coming to it. And I'm like, oh my God, I got to go see her. So we had a booth there, and then you had a booth there, and I actually got to listen to your presentation and everything. It was really cool.
Yeah. I got to do the presentation and then got to spend some time talking to you. And we actually recorded the show that I was on of yours there at the event, which was really cool. And I mean, that's definitely something that is unique that I do a lot of events, and I've not come in contact with any other podcasters that's doing that. So that's a really cool thing that you're doing. You want to talk a little bit about your show?
Yeah, like you said, it's 222 Paranormal. We got the name, actually. The name's my sister's birthday, February 22nd. And she's my co-host. I was hoping to get her on, but she's having troubles with her phone. I sent her the link, and she hasn't popped up yet or that. But anyhow, it's her birthday. And it's weird because the number 222 used to come up, and it really still does, but in my life a lot, in weird situations. I mean, I know that in your brain you have the part of your brain that recognizes things once you think that they're important. Mm-hmm. But I was seeing 222 everywhere. And this was years before the show. I mean, it got down to the point where I hang out with a band called Dead and Five. My best friend's the bass player, and all my friends are in it. And we did a show down south, and we had to go through this road that had a tractor on it. And the giant numbers on the tractor was 222. I mean, that's the kind of thing that we would see. We wouldn't be looking for it, but it would pop up. So when me and my sister were talking about doing a show, she's like, well, 222. I'm like, all right, let's do it. And so it's her birthday, but it also has a paranormal meaning and more of like an angelic meaning. It basically, if you see 222 numerous times, it kind of means you're on the right path.
Very cool.
In numerology, it means you're on the right path, you're on the right direction, that kind of thing. So it kind of fits in with what we do. We try to bring entertainment to people. Like you said, we do something a little different where we go to conventions and we interview people on the fly, to where a lot of podcasts, they really want to get all the information they can before they get a guest on. And we do that too when we have people call in. But when we're at the conventions, anybody that walks up to the table can be on our show. I mean, granted, we don't say, hey, sit down right away. We kind of look into them and just interview on the fly, come up with questions as the people talk to you. And you wouldn't believe the people we've met because of that. I mean, I got to meet you.
Absolutely.
That was awesome. But, that's just what we do. we go to the conventions, and you want to meet the people. That's where you go, right?
Absolutely. And I like that because you're in the moment, and there's just a certain kind of energy at these conventions and everything. And you can really pick up on that, because I know people are always wanting to talk to me about different stuff. And I'm sure you experience the same thing, that people just seem more open and willing to talk. And that was what was really cool whenever I met you, because I wasn't expecting to do a podcast. And we sat down, and I guess we recorded for maybe 30 minutes it was a fairly.
Yeah, it's pretty long for a quick one,
Yeah.
The ones that we do at the conventions usually only last 15 to 20 minutes, I mean, unless we get one of the celebrities, like Dalen Spratt or somebody on, and we just let them talk because they would say, hey, it's content, right?
Absolutely. And to me, those are some of the best questions, because you don't have that prep. You don't have that nervousness from the guest and also from the host. I mean, it's more shooting from the hip, and I feel like you learn a lot more doing it that way. So yeah, definitely cool concept. And I've enjoyed listening to the different interviews that you've done with different people at the shows.
Oh, thanks.
Yeah. So you cover a lot of different topics on your shows, not just the ones that are at the conventions. What are some of the different topics you cover?
Really anything to do with the paranormal. And when I say paranormal, I don't just mean ghost hunting. That was when we started the show, you got to have a niche at first. And that was our niche, was ghost hunting. But it was really anything to do with the paranormal, whether it's Bigfoot, Chupacabra, UFOs, missing time, time slips. I'm big in time slips, or even like giants. I've done a lot of research on giants and stuff like that. So really anything that is not of the normal. So it's paranormal, Really.
Yeah, ghost ships. I saw where you just did one on ghost ships, near-death experiences. You had a couple really big shows over the last month? A couple big guests.
Yeah, and the one that's coming out next weekend is even big. I mean, Steve Ward was just on, and he's a huge UFO guy. I'm telling you, he never has notes in front of him. He just rattles off all this information. He's awesome, which you need to have him on your show. And but next weekend we interviewed people from Haunted Toledo, and I helped out, and my sister was in the video of. It's about Return Ward. So we got 2 wards this month, but Return Ward's kind of a bad guy. He was the first serial killer in Ohio, and his killings happened about 4 miles down the road from me. So that was a great interview. I think you're going to enjoy that one.
Yeah, that's actually sort of a guilty pleasure of mine, is serial killers and studying about the psychology behind it. Yeah. So I'm definitely looking forward to checking that one out. Yeah. So you mentioned Toledo. So you're out of the Toledo area, correct?
Yeah, Toledo, Ohio. I'm right on the Michigan line, literally in my house where I am right now. Quarter mile that way is Michigan, so we're right on the Michigan line. But, for our show, me and Jen, my sister, we travel all over. I mean, we've gone to Arizona, lots. We've spent a lot of times in like Pennsylvania, in that area. We're going to branch out. We're going out to over to Indiana this year. Hopefully hit some spots there. But we really travel everywhere for our podcast. So
wow,
a lot of road, a lot of miles on the car.
So do you have sort of like a show season? I mean, are there certain shows you do consistently, or how do you kind of pick? How do you kind of pick where you're traveling to? I mean, are there some of the big ones that I know you like to do the Michigan Paracon.
Yeah, Michigan Paracon's the big one. And that we can't miss, because we always say, if you want to meet anybody in the paranormal, that's where you go. All the TV shows are there. And it's so nice to talk to them guys and gals outside of the TV realm. They're just normal people. They have a blast. There's karaoke going on. It's a huge party up there. So if you get a chance, I'm trying to get you to go, but I know you got a lot of stuff. But Michigan Paracon is the Paracon to go to. But we just look at the different shows. Sometimes I email them and say, hey, we do a podcast. That's what we do. We do live. We bring entertainment to your show. So there's some of them that, give us tables for free so that we can do our thing at the
Mm-hmm.
show and interview their speakers or their guests. But we just basically get together and look, okay, do we want to go here? Do we want to go here? We want to try this, It's
Mm-hmm.
really up in the air. I mean, we have our standards like Michigan UFO Contact is a big one, and Michigan Paracon. Butler, Pennsylvania, we go to that one a few times. But, since COVID happened, we haven't been to any of them. I did go up to the casino where Michigan Paracon is held on the same day that's supposed to be there,
Mm-hmm.
because we had our rooms already, and we're like, you know what? Instead of canceling the rooms, let's just go. Even
Mm-hmm.
though COVID was happening, but that was really weird because we were in the casino by ourselves, literally. We were like the only people in the place. So I ended up spending most of my time just talking to the guard at the front door about ghost hunting and the paranormal stuff that happens at the casino. So I had a blast. Jen went off and played, the slots, and I just sat and talked to a guy.
Did they have a lot of activity there at the casino?
Yeah, they do. Especially when the convention's going on, because you have all that energy of all the people that do this for a living.
Mm-hmm.
And there's so many people that, you go to an event and everybody's there, and it's the energy of the people that ghost hunt. So you got possibly the spirits that, I don't want to say attached to them, but are familiar with them. I don't
Mm-hmm.
know if they could travel. I mean, I assume they just can travel wherever they want.
Mm-hmm.
But he definitely told me that during the convention, there's so much weird activity that goes on, and it's not just the people there having parties. It's the actual spirits that are there. And he did tell me about upstairs by where we have the vendor area.
Mm-hmm.
There's a hallway that he's like, you got to go to this hallway. And I was like, well, I'm not going to go there now because I'm like the only person in the building. There's security cameras everywhere. I'm not just going to go down this hallway. But he said, when the convention happens, I'm going to take you down that hallway. He says, you'll guaranteed you'll see something. So I'm looking forward to that.
Very cool. Yeah.
Yeah.
So how long have you been into the paranormal? Is that something that you've been into it since you were younger, or that you just always interested you?
Well, from an early age, I don't know the exact time when I started, but I was more into UFOs
Mm-hmm.
and space, UFOs, stuff like that. And I kind of was into ghost hunting, kind of interested, but I had an experience with my best friend Jackie that passed away, and it really catapulted me into learning about near-death experiences after death, spirit communication, stuff like that. Because I had my best friend Jackie. I mean, we were like, I'd say psychic friends. I mean, I would pick up the phone to call her, and her line would be busy because she'd be calling me, that kind of friend.
Mm-hmm.
And I got a call one night that she was on life support and not going to make it through the night. So, me, I'm just like, okay, well, keep me informed. I hung up the phone, and I'm like, wait a minute, that's my best friend, So I went and saw her at the hospital, which is a 2-hour drive. I went and saw her, came back because, me, I had to go to work. My best friend's laying in the hospital, and I'm like, oh, I got to go to work. But so the next day I get a call, and they said that they're going to disconnect the life support.
Oh.
And I drove out there, and I was a wreck. I mean, I don't cry unless I watch like somebody giving people stuff on TV, But I was on my way there, and I was a wreck. I mean, I don't remember basically driving to Cleveland, which is 2 hours away. And about halfway there, imagine a stove and the heating element inside a stove. Okay. Imagine taking that from your head to your toes. I felt the heat, like a dead line of heat, come down my body. Okay.
Yeah.
And the second that happened, I was like I am right now, just totally normal, totally fine.
Wow.
Okay. From being a total wreck, driving, which I shouldn't have been driving, but I was driving, to how I am now. So I get to the hospital, and I go up and I see her husband. I'm like, hey, what's going on? And he's like, well, they disconnected her and stopped all her meds about an hour ago, which was the exact same time I felt that. Okay.
Wow.
And he's like, they don't know how she's still alive. And I'm like, okay. And he's like, do you want to see her? I'm like, yeah. So I walk in and I walk up to her and I take her hand and I hear a beep and I'm like, oh, I stepped on a hose, you know? And the nurse comes in and says, no, she just passed.
Oh.
Okay. So I don't know if that feeling I had where it felt like heat going through me was
Mm-hmm.
actually her communicating that she was just disconnected or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
But they said that the second I touched her hand, she passed. And they all say she waited for me. Okay. So I still wasn't really into the paranormal at that time until the next day when I actually got messages from her in forms of the, like, I turn on the radio and I hear REO Speedwagon playing, which she played over and over and over. And since then, I've had a lot of communication with her through dreams and different paranormal activities. So that's what kind of put me into the ghosty side of it and
Mm-hmm.
wanting to know more about it. And that was going on 4 years ago now. And we're still doing our show and I'm still learning as I go.
Wow,
You
that's,
know?
first off, I'm terribly sorry about your friend. I know that
Mm-hmm.
that's tough anyways, but what a beautiful story and connection
Yeah.
that you all have. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
that just, I mean, to me, that's just unexplainable other
Yeah.
than the fact that, I mean, when you get a message from
Mm-hmm.
someone. And so that's what a great story. What a
Yeah.
touching story.
And the first dream I had of her was like 3 days after she passed. And the first
Mm-hmm.
thing I said to her was, hey, I thought you were dead. But that's how it happened. I mean, and the great thing about that is I kind of understand when people come up to me and tell me their story about how they have dreams of people that passed.
Mm-hmm.
And I hear that all the time. And a lot of people know about my story about her, so they confide in me about their dreams that they have of their loved ones that passed, and even their pets that passed. They say that they've had dreams of their pets. And I said, that's just a way that they can communicate with us after life. Because
Absolutely.
I don't know if it's because when we're sleeping, we're closer to the realm or whatever,
Mm-hmm.
but I think it's a way for them to make it easier to communicate with us.
I completely agree. I mean, even, when I'm investigating, one of the techniques that I like to throw into investigations is I actually like to sleep at
Mm-hmm.
the locations for that very reason, because, you are, you're really in that vulnerable state, and I feel like you're really open. And so, if other spirits can communicate well with us, then, why not? Get messages from, angels or from
Mm-hmm.
other spirits, that we're close to.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I think that is absolutely a possibility. And I always notice the activity that I get whenever I am sleeping. It's a much different type of activity,
Mm-hmm.
than when I'm investigating. Sometimes I think it might be because maybe some of the spirits might be intimidated to communicate. So I don't think that's the case in your case, but I mean, as far as, like I said, myself with investigating, I definitely think that we do get messages in our dreams, and dream interpretation has always been something that's been fascinating to me.
Yeah. Yeah. Because I mean, I just had a dream a couple nights ago that I was in a theater with someone that I haven't seen in years, and I'm like, okay, how the heck does your brain make stuff that you've never been to,
Right.
and situations that and the same thing over and over.
Mm-hmm.
I've dreamed about the same places but in different situations. Now,
Mm-hmm.
some people actually say that when we dream, we travel to those places on an alternate realm.
Mm-hmm.
But who knows? I mean, but it's so weird that your brain can actually put all that stuff together and make it so vividly clear that it seems real, and
Yeah.
it's not.
And I've always heard, I don't know if this is true or not, but I've always heard that we don't dream about people that we've never actually met, because
Yeah.
our brain can't construct a person like that. So if we do dream about somebody, even if we don't know who they are, we've met them or seen them at some point in time for that reason. Yeah. I don't know, but I mean, it makes sense to me.
Yeah, there's a part of your brain, and that's what I mentioned with the 222 thing. There's a part of your brain called the active reticulating system. And what that is we as humans are deletion characters. We delete so much stuff, you know, like the sound of the blood running through your ear, or the air conditioner, or the cars driving by, or that, and your brain has to delete all that stuff until there's a point where it knows something's important. And that's how when you buy a new car, you see the same car driving by all the time, or, you know, you notice things more. And I think that the people that you dream about, which I've heard this said, is you could be walking down the street and see 100 people. Well, those are the people that are in your dreams now, because your brain doesn't put it out there that it's important, but it remembers those faces. So that makes sense.
No, that makes perfect sense. Yeah. So, so as far as, you know, the different guests and the different topics that you've covered, whether it be, you know, dreams, near-death experiences, ghost ships, monoliths, what's your favorite type of paranormal to study?
I still like the UFO stuff, even though we don't really cover UFO stuff that much on our show. But I'm still big into UFOs and big into space and learning about the planets and learning about exoplanets that are, you know, could have life on them. You know, I want to do a show about Mars. So Nick Redfern just had a book out about life on Mars. And I was talking to him, and he's like, yeah, I want to be on your show. He's asked to be on our show like 5 times, and it just never works out, because we go to Michigan UFO Contact and we always sit next to him. But I swear to God, he writes a book every week. So I think he's like 2 books past his Mars book, but I still want to have him on and talk about Mars. That's really my favorite stuff, is the UFO stuff. And I've studied a lot about giants, but we really haven't. We did one show, but that's kind of like a thing that I just do for fun. Yeah. Is study about giants and ancient history and stuff. But really, anything to do with the paranormal, I love. So really, all the shows are great. I mean, we've had some stinkers, you know. There's been times where me and Jen got to think of a topic, and we're like, I can't think of this. So we get in the studio and we're like, what do you want to talk about? We're like, let's just pick something. And they turn out okay, but to me, I'm like, I'd rather have something that I feel is more interesting for our guests to listen to. But we get feedback on our shows that people like the stinkers and the good, you know, the ones I consider good.
Well, I mean, they make you think too. I mean, I've not heard a show that you've done that hasn't at least made me stop and think about, well, that's really interesting. I haven't looked at that topic that way. So even the ones that you might not consider, I mean, they're still really good. Yeah. I really enjoy them.
This show that's out right now, because we had 2 big shows, I ran out of bandwidth on our Lipson page, which is our media host. We're only allowed so many megabytes or whatever. And the show, I needed like 18 megabytes to finish off what we pay for. And the show was like 27 megabytes long or whatever. So I cut that show up so much. I even took the music out, the intro music and everything. So to me, that was kind of a stinker. But then when I listened to it, I'm like, actually, that was pretty interesting. Even though we didn't, if you could hear the original show and hear what it sounds like now, it's completely different, because I had to cut out so much stuff to fit it into because the show that we have coming out this weekend is an hour and a half long. And then our Steve Ward show is an hour and a half long. And we usually like to keep our shows to an hour or less. Yeah. So I had to fit it in there. But even though I had to cut it up, after listening to it, the final cut, I was like, yeah, that's not too bad, you know?
I look forward to hearing that one. Do you think that we're, what is it, 60 days that we're out from finding out some of the information being declassified?
I've heard that. And so many people come up to me and they're like, yeah, in this date or whatever. I'm like, I have no idea what they were talking about,
I just heard it on different podcasts. I've not heard a definitive date. I know we're not at 60 days now. I think we're probably more like probably 50 or 45, but I've heard that, and I didn't know if there was anything to that or not.
I don't know. I really don't know. But, it's like, if they do say, okay, aliens are here, aliens have been on Earth for years, what's it going to do? I mean, people say that religion's going to crumble. But then again, like I was talking to my mom about, because my mom's very religious. And she's like, God created us. He didn't create anybody. God created us. It says it in the Bible. I'm like, but that's the Bible that we know. And how do we know that God didn't create a planet with aliens with arms coming out of their head as a practice, But as of what was it, 1984, they found their first exoplanet, which means a planet outside of our solar system. Since then, they figured out that almost every single star out there has planets around it. And there's billions and trillions of stars that have planets around them. And we talk about the habitable zone, which it's either too hot or too cold, but that's just life that we know. And the universe is billions of years old. There could be, and I believe that there are alien races, whether it's people or whether it's animals or whatever, all over the universe. And there's a thing called the Fermi paradox, where Enrico Fermi was sitting at a table one day having dinner, and he was like, where are they? And everybody's like, who? Where's who? And he's like, the aliens. In the amount of time that the universe is old, and as close as most stars are to us, I mean, they're pretty far, but they should have had enough time at the speeds that they can reach to reach us. Whether they have or not, I don't know. But like you said, it makes you think, because there's so many things that show us that aliens might have been here. I mean, there's cave drawings, there's all that stuff. So who knows? And I've met someone at one of the shows, and she was on our show, but I met this lady that actually says that she can communicate with the reptilians. And she says, yeah, one of them's at the show here with us. And I was like, which one? But she wouldn't tell us, I'm like, I want to meet him, But
yeah,
who knows? I don't know. Nobody really knows, but who knows if they've been here or not. And if there is going to be someone that actually in a few days, whatever, tells us that they have been or not, how do we know how the world's going to react? You never know. I mean, look at what went on with this COVID thing, and it's only been a year, and we're stuck in the house for a year and we go insane. What happens when we find out that there's been aliens on this planet, either watching us or helping us, or even in our government? Who knows? What's going to happen?
Well, it seemed like over the past year that they were maybe year and a half, that little bits of information was coming out, but it was kind of coming out sort of slid in with other information. You would have big news stories, and then you would have, this little bit of information that they sort of declassified or put out there. But everybody was so distracted by everything else that it seemed like either it wasn't big news or that they just didn't really pay attention. So who knows what the big distraction is, And
with the COVID thing going on, I've had a lot of people ask me, well, has the paranormal activity, has it ramped up or has it gone down? And I think that it's ramped up a lot, but people are home more. They're not going to their jobs. So while the ghosts are at their house having parties during the day and they're working, now they're home, and the ghosts are like, hey, what the heck are you guys doing home? You're supposed to be at work, So maybe the activity is ramping up, and I think it is.
I think so too. I mean, I was able to get in a couple investigations this past year, and the activity, it was ramping up, and there were a few places that was really quiet, but it was a different type of activity. And I felt like it was ramping up I mean, my theory was that it had something to do kind of with the energy of the universe, and kind of what we're putting out there was at least sort of how that felt to me. But I've heard different things from different people. I know a lot of people haven't been able to investigate, but for those of us that did this past year, there was a lot of activity, and it was really different. I mean, it was almost like they were trying to get our attention,
Yeah, that's what I've heard.
Yeah. And I think as a whole, a lot of people don't really listen, very well. I mean, we have stuff happening around us all the time, and I don't think people really listen very well. And this is sort of given people an opportunity to sit and listen, just because we are all sort of stuck inside and not getting out as much as we were.
Yeah. My style of ghost hunting, and I am a ghost hunter. I don't consider myself a paranormal investigator because I don't sit down and do the research and all that. Because I mean, I'm doing so many things, and I'm getting invited to go ghost hunting with people. So I consider myself a ghost hunter, I guess. I don't know, but I love my style of ghost hunting is where I actually go in and I want to be quiet. I don't want to hear other people talking. I don't want that because, like you said, it's so interesting. You can hear stuff that you're not going to hear if even one person's talking. Like, great example is when you were sleeping in solitaire at Brushy Mountain. I watched that episode. When you were sleeping, you would have never heard someone say nighty night.
Nope.
You were talking, and it is clear as day.
Yeah.
And I've heard stuff like there's a cemetery out here that I clean off tombstones and grave sites, just as like a hobby. And they put up a brand new mausoleum. So I went in there, and I'm in there by myself, and I'm hearing like 7 or 8 different voices talking.
Wow.
And I'm like, okay, this is weird. Because I just wanted to go in and look at it because, I mean, it's kind of interesting to go into a building and see all the urns and, different things. Like there was a Garfield cookie jar as an urn and stuff. It's so interesting to look at stuff like that. And I'm standing there and I'm like, I hear people. This is crazy. I hear people talking. And I didn't get out a recorder or nothing because, I wanted to be respectful. And just there's sometimes when you go ghost hunting, the best thing to do is just sit alone and listen,
That's my favorite thing to do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And there's so many people that say, well, if you don't have it recorded, it didn't happen. Well, okay. I saw like there's a place, one of our first places and most places that we've ghost hunted here in Toledo called the Collingwood Arts Center. And it's a theater, and theaters are extremely active.
Yes.
And it was also a place where I don't know if you call it a nunnery or whatever, where the nuns would live. And they would eat their dinners on the stage. And I've always heard that you can see a nun sitting in the audience or, where the seats are, or you can hear activity on the stage. So one night we were in there and it was probably 3 a.m. and I was sitting in the main auditorium by myself and it was pitch black in there. I was just sitting and I was watching green and blue orbs just go back and forth across the stage. And I didn't record it because, I just wanted to experience it. But, we hear people talk about orbs. I've actually seen visible orbs and they're green and blue just floating across the stage. It was the weirdest thing.
Oh, wow.
So yeah, like I say, if you go ghost hunting, at least take some time to sit and be alone and quiet.
Yeah, and I like to let the location kind of tell me where to go. And I do that by just kind of going and sitting. A lot of the time when you go to these places, there's kind of, especially if you're filming an episode, you kind of go in and you get your B-roll and there's sort of this hustle and bustle to get to it. But I always like to just kind of take time before I even get any equipment going and just kind of go, let the place tell me where the best place to go is. And then sometimes those experiences, I mean, if you're able to capture them, that's great. But sometimes it's not meant for that. It's just special communication meant for you to hear and not for anyone else. I mean, when I saw my first shadow figure, I was in a room with 9 other people, and we didn't have any type of recorders or anything going. We did have audio, but we didn't have any type of video. And it would have been one of the most amazing things to have captured on video. But I don't feel like we would have actually seen it had there been a video camera going at that moment. I think that was something that we were supposed to experience, and it was supposed to be something special for us that we were just supposed to tell about, but not supposed to actually show.
Yeah. You never know. I mean, and then, it just popped in my head about the Collingwood Arts Center.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if I talked to you about my belief in orbs, and I'm a photographer, and I know how light works and all that, but we call it the death room down in the basement of the Collingwood Arts Center. There's a room where when the nuns lived there and they would pass away in the wintertime, they would basically store the body in this room. So we call it the death room. And we were in that room, and I was videotaping my sister doing her investigation, and we got skunked. We were like, you can even see it on the video. It's on YouTube, but I'm like, we got nothing. Let's go out. I rewatched that video, and in the video, there's light anomalies, and I'm talking bright, that just appear like out of Jen's head and float out of the room or float in. There's one part where we walk out of the room, and she's like, oh, I just got to chill. And as I'm panning away, you can see this ball of light just go right into Jen. And when I do video work, especially with that old camera, I don't really watch the screen. I watch the light, because if dust goes through, I can see the dust go through in the light and say dust or whatever, so that later on we know what it is. But I didn't see anything in that video until I looked back at it. And there's just lights, like, according to her head, the one light was like this tall next to her, almost the same size as her head, just appear out of nowhere and then float out of the room. So, wow. Yeah, it's interesting stuff. And that's just another thing, too. You never know what you're going to capture until you look at your evidence.
That's right. And I mean, that's why it takes me so long to get videos out sometimes, because I've got, 5 different cameras that I'm having to review and 5 different audio recorders. And each one of those have been set out for, 10 to 12 hours. So it's a lot of stuff to go through. And when you're watching that video, you can't hardly look away, because you just, audio is great because I can sit, and during the day when I'm doing my design work or drawing or anything, I can sit there and listen to it while I'm going. But when it's video, I mean, you have to sit down and devote that time, because if you look away, you may miss the smallest, most subtle thing. And but it's such a rush, whenever you actually can capture something.
People ask me, can we go ghost hunting with you? I'm like, yeah, but it's not like TV. You're going to sit and nothing's going to happen for hours, and then something's going to happen and you're going to freak out for 2 seconds, and then it's going to be sitting again. And that's another thing too. They don't realize, like, especially you. I mean, you have multiple cameras, multiple recorders in multiple locations, running for the whole amount of time that you're there.
Yeah. And
okay, I'm going to watch this camera now for 10 hours, and then I'm going to watch this camera for 10 hours.
Yeah. I always have my mobile recorder on me, and I do always start that one as soon as I get to the location, because I have missed some really good captures because of just not having the recorder on. But, and then I have, at least 5 static cameras that I have. I actually have more. They just don't always work. But if I'm one person covering a really big location, I'll even pre-record questions and stuff, and put a pre-recorded a recorder with the questions in the room with a recorder and a video camera. And of course, I always have audio and video together, just to kind of see if the activity is different when I'm physically in the room asking questions, or if it's a pre-recorded question with nobody else in there. And then, of course, leaving different tools in there to see if they'll interact, because I started doing that because if I was sitting and watching a video camera with just a blank room, it was easy to sometimes miss things going on. But I always try to have a laser grid, try to have, of course, the recorder, couple flashlights in each room, so that if the pre-recorded question is asked, that they have some mode to try to communicate back with. And that helps me in watching as well, because, it's a lot easier if something catches your eye, with a flashlight or something, rather than just a blank room, So there is a lot. And you can still do experiments even if you can't cover, an entire area. Most of the time, if it's a house and stuff, it's pretty easy to do, and I can spend as much time. But some of these locations, like these prisons and that sort of thing, it's really kind of hard to cover it all with one person.
Oh yeah.
And just to kind of circle back, where you were talking about the light anomalies, Brushy Mountain was the first place that I had actually experienced. I was sitting in the auditorium, and you always think of orbs and stuff as, what you're just capturing there on the camera, but we were seeing these with our own eyes as well, and they were green. The ones we were seeing was kind of a green and a yellow. Okay. And they were in the auditorium. So, first time I saw one, it was kind of like, wait a minute, what am I seeing? I know there's no traffic, so there's no light pollution coming in. So that was actually a really cool thing to experience with my own eyes, and the first time I'd ever done that as well.
Yeah, I've heard different Indian, like Native American stories about orbs, because they consider orbs like those visible orbs that are either green or blue, or even like they're white ones too, and that's when I think of an orb, that's what I think of. And it's like, it's so amazing to just sit there and see it. And you think, wait a minute, is that just my eyes? But they continue on, so it's like the things that freak us out, right?
Right. And I always, go ahead.
Oh, I was going to say, when you're talking about your equipment, it popped in my head. Have you ever experienced where, okay, let me give you this example of what happened to us. Okay. We're in the Toledo Police Museum, and when we're in the basement, that's mainly where the activity happens. It's almost like the bad guys are in the basement, the good guys are upstairs. Okay. You get EVPs from police upstairs, but in the basement, we were trying an EVP session, and we had the recorder going, and I had my K2 meter, which I always have with me because that's kind of my baseline. And nothing was happening. So we were asking questions, and we weren't getting responses. The K2 meter wasn't acting up until we played it back for us to listen to. And that's when we were getting activity from the K2 meter, like there was spirits in the room. And it made me think, do they hear us verbally or through the electronics in that space? Obviously I've had responses from, just asking questions out into the air, but it was like in that room, it almost seems like the only time we could get any activity is when the recorder played our voices instead of us saying it. And when you're talking about your equipment, that just popped in my head. I just wonder if have you ever experienced that where you didn't get any activity until you played your recording?
I have, yeah. And I didn't know if it was because of what they were hearing, or if it was because the fact that I wasn't there, if maybe, seeing my presence in the room, if that was potentially upsetting, or the fact that they didn't want to communicate. I wasn't sure, but I've taken it a step further. I carry a whiteboard with me when I do investigations. And so sometimes instead of saying can you knock on the wall, or saying, can you finish this sound or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
I'll say, okay, I'm going to write something here on this board. I want to know if you can see me, and
Okay.
see if I can get them to, I'll write a number on there, see if I can get them to call it out, or write something on there that says, can you shut the door? And I have had luck with writing numbers and holding up my fingers and not calling it out, but having either the spirit box call it back, or have just a voice out of thin air, through the recorder on the EVPs. So I have had that. So I know that there are instances where they can actually see what I'm doing,
Okay.
and can read. So I think it's a mixture. We've even been doing experiments where we're in an area like Brushy Mountain, for instance. You'd be standing in a centralized area where you've got some jail cells going down the hall. And then in another direction, you might have the cafeteria. So you've got these multiple rooms. We've had where we've asked a question and, the voices carry through that area.
Yeah.
And we've had them respond in the other rooms as well. So in essence, it's like we're not in there, but, it's not the audio recorder. So I've got a lot of different theories on that, and I'm always interested to hear what other people have experienced. And what you just said makes me wonder if that does have something to do with the playback on the audio. Because I've even heard people talk about being able to pick up better EVPs by using the digital, or not the digital recorders, but the small tapes.
Yeah, the old tape.
The lead,
the magnetic tapes.
Exactly. And so they say that can actually pick up some of the sounds a little bit better because you're hearing it on a different level. So, to me, I'm always interested to try those different techniques because you just never know. And I think it also depends on the place as well, so.
Yeah, because you figure we're trying to find the ghosts or acknowledge the ghost using equipment that measures magnetics, electromagnetic pulses or electromagnetic in the air. And there's so many times where people will hear voices, and not because they're going crazy or like me, they'll hear voices and the person next to them won't hear it. Well, I think that it's almost like, I want to say electronic, but it's a way that your brain is picking that up. And maybe that's the way that they communicate. And that's how we can hear EVPs. It's almost like they're putting that into our mind in some ways.
That's a good point. Have you ever had a recorder pick up like two people together and both of them have recorders and one of them pick up something totally different than the other? Yeah, I've had that happen as well. Actually, at Hell's Bar Dam, I had my name called on mine, and it was a male's voice as clear as can be, and it was just like Miranda, and it had that same cadence and tone to it. And so when I played it back for the team, the guy who was with me, because I was with a team at this time, he played his at that same moment and didn't say it at all. And not even a sound. You could hear the other sounds around it, the ambient white noise, but you could not hear the Miranda. And so that's always sort of fascinated me as to why my recorder, because they were the exact same Sony dictation recorder, and he could hear it on mine, but it wasn't on his. So it wasn't like I heard it, but he didn't. It was just kind of fascinating to me.
Yeah. It's the electronics. That's what I'm thinking. And, me and Jen, we've, we use, different microphones instead of these and our equipment, but we've actually recorded EVPs while we're doing our show. And like we were doing the Greenbrier Ghost, the story about the Greenbrier Ghost.
Yes.
And we're sitting there and we're ready to sign off. And, all the stuff, if the people that are watching want to listen to this, just send me a message. I'll send you the audio. But we're sitting there recording. I'm going, okay, well, check out Jen's Poshmark page. And we're closing, the music's starting. And all of a sudden, we hear a woman screaming, and it kind of sounded electronic, but it was like a woman screaming, and we're like, what was that? And you can hear me on the recording. I'm like, what is that? And then I do a dorky laugh, and I'm like, oh. But I played it back, and it was only in my microphone. Because I record Jen's microphone on one track, and my microphone on the other, so I can edit them, and then music on a separate track. And it was only on my microphone, and you can clearly hear a woman screaming in the microphone. And we've had stuff like that happen here a few times. We're sitting in, this is my house. This used to be a bedroom, but I turned it into my photography studio. And then once we started doing recordings, I just, set up for recording. We were sitting here one night, and as you can't see it now because the camera's the other way, but the door leading out to the hallway to where the bedroom and the living room is, I was sitting here and I saw a blue light go across. I'm like, oh, that's interesting. I just saw a blue light. And we were done. So Jen picked up her recorder and her SB7 spirit box. And she went over to where it was, and she says, we just want to see if you know who lives here. And the SB7 is going like that, clear as day. In Jackie's voice, you can hear her say, "Hi, Joe."
Wow.
And I'll send it to you after we do this.
Please do.
I'm like, wow, did that just happen?
So that gives me cold chills.
We pick up stuff all the time when we're recording, and when we go to these conventions, we're usually at places that are haunted. So we're always trying to pick up, we're always listening and that. And we've had a few things happen like that, where just weird things happen when we're recording. One of the great researchers in UFOs is Bill Konkoleski. He is in charge of MUFON out of Michigan. And we go to Michigan UFO Contact, like I said earlier. I've tried 3 times to record him for our show, and every single time the recorders stop, or something happens where, like, I use a Zoom H6 recorder at the shows, and it's so reliable. I mean, you hit play, it works great. It will not record him. So I don't know if it's the reptilian that was there, right? But for 3 years now, we see him there, and we try to record with him, and something happens, like the recorder will stop, or the power goes out, or something. So weird stuff happens to us all the time when we record.
I used to have and it was really weird, anytime if I was super stressed, when I would get ready to do any type of filming or any type of recording, my electronics would mess up. And I had, of all things, I had 2 glass desks in my house shatter within, they were in different areas of the house. One of them was my computer desk, and it shattered. It was so loud and so bad that it actually killed a turtle that I had. It startled her so much. And then 2 months later, I had another glass table. This one was outside shatter. And of all things, I took a bed that I had in my house to my sister's house. And a week after I took the bed over there, her glass table shattered. Now, I don't know about you, but I have never been around so many shattering tables. And same thing, I was getting ready to record, and I had a lot going on, just really stressed. My hairdryer blew up, and I'm not talking blew up, I'm talking sparks and flames. So I've learned myself that whenever when I'm going to be recording, because it happened, Donald Martin was here on the feed, and I was getting ready to film down at the funeral home down there for the first time, and we were trying to get everything to working. Cameras wouldn't work. None of my static cameras would work then, and so we've had that happen, numerous times with electronics or with trying to record. So I've learned that when I'm going to be doing something, I have to really center and ground myself, because I don't know if a table's going to blow up or if electronics are going to malfunction. And another thing that was kind of interesting, when it was another time we were investigating at Brushy, I believe there was 5 of us there at that time, and we were trying to do an Estes method session. Mm-hmm. And we all had recorders, and only one of our recorders worked. We checked them and double checked them, and each one of them quit at the same time, except for one. And so I believe stuff like that happens all the time, and nothing's more frustrating, though, especially when you're trying to record somebody and you can't figure out really why, if it's, something spiritual that's causing it to malfunction, if it's something maybe within yourself that's causing it. I don't know.
And it's so embarrassing because, like, we're like, hey, Bill, will you come over and, talk to us? And then he's like, yeah, okay, I gotta speak in a little bit, but let's just do it now. And I'm like, okay, I hit record and I'm talking, and I look down and I'm like, it's not recording. So it's like, he's probably thinking, oh geez, who are these people trying to talk to me, And I'm like, no, I swear to God, it's the aliens. It's not me.
You need to just set your phone up there too, just in case, as a backup. Now that would really be something if both your phone and the recorder would quit working at the same time.
Yeah.
What's your favorite tool to use when you go on these investigations?
I always start with the K2. That's my home base thing. And then once I establish communication, the best thing I think is the audio recorder. I've got like the Ovilus and stuff, and I don't know how accurate my Ovilus is, because it seems to just spew out stuff when you're touching it, and I think it's a static electricity. But honestly, I don't have much equipment. I have one REM pod that my sister just bought me. I'm actually going to make a REM pod out of a little truck, because before she bought it, I was like, I want a REM pod. So it's called a Junior Thurman. It's a little kit that you buy to make REM pods. So I like REM pods because you can put them out and you don't have to worry about them. But the big thing for me is your senses, the K2 really, because it's just your baseline, and a video or an audio recorder. Really, that's my favorite. I mean, I have ones that I'd like to get, like the SLS camera. I want to get one of those. But that's more of like a toy for me. I mean, I know it's a good piece of equipment, and you can you see things in it. But I really just love the audio recorder. Just the digital recorders, because
that's mine
I'm an audio kind of guy, I guess.
Well, I mean, because too, when you go and you account for your baseline readings with your K2 meters and everything, and can kind of figure out that there's nothing, no conduit or something that's causing some kind of K2 spikes and such, and when you can account for your environment with any type of outside noise pollution, and then who's actually on the property, when you can account for all that, and then you get these voices that, like for me, if I get a male's voice and there's no male on the property, or, when you have everyone accounted for in your area, and you start getting these other voices, I mean, that's kind of hard to explain sometimes.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
It still freaks me out every time I hear it.
Same here. Same here.
We always have, we go on some paid ghost hunts, and then, like I said, I'm just a ghost hunter. I'm not a paranormal investigator. I don't spend a lot of time doing research and all that. But we're there to get attention, get the ghost's attention. And we're there to see them, whether it's apparitions or hear them or that. But there's so many times where I'm with people and something happens and they freak out and they run out of the room. I'm like, wait a minute, you're here for this.
That's me. I don't understand when people get freaked out, because it's like, isn't that why you're here?
Yeah.
So, as far as some of the different locations that you've gone to, do you have a favorite location or most interesting location?
I tell you what, we were talking about electronics acting up
Mm-hmm.
in Toledo here. I got invited, me and my sister got invited to ghost hunt with Haunted Toledo, who's an awesome team because they do more of the historical
Mm-hmm.
preservation in the
Mm-hmm.
paranormal. And they're the
Yeah.
ones that are on this show coming up this Sunday. They're the ones that we interviewed about the serial killer. And
Okay.
so you'll be able to listen to them. And they're good friends of ours.
Mm-hmm.
Well, they got a call one time from someone that owned a house downtown. And what happened was the guy started to renovate it. He pulled one of the boards away from the wall and some bones fell out of it.
Hmm.
And he pulled up another board and there were more bones and more bones. And come to find out, the house is literally filled with bones from the ceiling to the floor, all in the walls.
Wow.
So they stopped their investigation. They called the cops. The coroner came out, the news crews came out, and they determined that it was mainly canine bones, but who knows? But that is a place, and it's not there anymore because the owner of it started to go in there and tearing it apart more and more. And but that place was the most active place I've ever been. There's no electricity in it at all. No water, no electricity. It's just, and when you walked in the house, literally it was a shell because the floorboards are taken up. And but there was so much activity in that house. Or I walked in the front door. You could actually stand at the front door, hold the K2 meter outside, put it in the door, and it would go to red instantly. Pull it out, nothing. So the K2s were useless. The activity in that house was amazing. We were there one night and we're all up in the attic and I'm looking around. I'm like, I'm surprised there's not bats here. And
Mm-hmm.
just as I said that, a white bat, now a white bat, flew over all our heads and we all saw it. And we were like, there's no such thing as white bats in Toledo. I don't know if there are in other parts of the country. There's no white bats in Toledo. And we're like, okay. I just mentioned it. And all of a sudden we see this giant white bat flew over our head. Was it a dove? Was it, something else? And we're like, I don't know. So we actually searched through the whole attic, tried to find a bat. We couldn't find it. Okay. Another time we were there, the owner was there and he's like, yeah, pull up a floorboard. And he's like walking through and he's like, here. And he ripped up a floorboard and we found a little carved head out of bone that just a little carved head. And he's like, see, stuff happens all the time here. And that was the most active place I've ever been. We had so much activity. And I mean, I don't want to disclose too much about it because it's really not my property to
Yeah.
say. It's more Haunted Toledo's property. And
Mm-hmm.
they're awesome people. But the time that I spent there was amazing. And different things happen. I'll tell you off air because I don't want to disclose a lot of stuff because I don't know
Sure.
if I'm allowed to or not.
Right.
But the activity that I saw there was just mind blowing, and seeing that the whole place was full of bones, and they think that it was a Santeria house, so there were
Okay.
sacrifices, animal sacrifices in the house.
Mm-hmm.
So the kind of EVPs we got was the one spirit would always call out the name of the girl that was with us. We heard screaming, we heard animal noises, stuff like that. So that place, I love that place. But another place that I love, and it's not there anymore, is Old St. Joseph's in Lorain, Ohio. It's a hospital. And that's really where I first saw my most activity I've seen that happened to me is we were in the intensive care unit and there's no electricity in the whole hospital. Huge place. No electricity. And I'm seeing lights bouncing off the walls and I'm looking at the door to ICU and I'm like, hey, there's somebody coming down the hallway because, flashlights.
Mm-hmm.
Nobody showed up. So I'm like, okay. They walked past. A few minutes later, I see the same kind of lights where it looks like somebody's coming down the hallway with a flashlight. It's bouncing off the walls. And I'm like, it's just light coming in the window through the door. So I turn my light on and I look at the door and it's a solid metal door. There's no light, no windows in it. So that kind of activity, or we were down in the emergency room and my sister actually saw a full body apparition of the doctor that they see in there.
Oh, wow.
So
Okay.
love that place. I mean, the activity was crazy in that place. My K2 meter, which I always carry with me, it was like bang, 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 going red, 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 like somebody was running past us. And I didn't know it at the time, but that was when my sister saw the full body apparition of the doctor running past her.
Oh,
So
wow.
just stuff like that. But those are my two favorite places. And I've been to a lot of different places, had weird things happen to me, had walls, like partition walls pushed over on me and stuff, but those two places are still my favorite. And unfortunately, they're not here anymore. Both of them are tore down.
Wow. That's so unfortunate. I mean, especially when you find a great place that's really active. That's how I was with the Sunset Hill House. I mean, it was somewhere that was just so active. Of course, it's been, cleaned and there's a family living in it now and they aren't having any activity. But just the minute you walk through the door, you were pretty much guaranteed activity. And I've never been anywhere like that because a lot of the time it's kind of hit or miss. But I too like hospitals. You'll have to come down and go to Old South Pitt Hospital in South Pittsburgh, Tennessee. That's a really good location. And
all right, I'll get my car and I'll head down right now.
Yeah, come on. I'll give them a call. We'll go in. I mean, that place, you talk about a lot of residual. We were getting the elevators. The elevators don't work. And it was just myself and another guy who spent the night in there. And we had the elevators going. I called for a nurse. I was sitting at the nurse's station and I asked if a nurse would go down to the hall to a specific room and check on a patient. And you hear what sounds like the chair kind of at the end of the table. And then you hear footsteps go all the way down to the hall. It was so cool because you could hear it, moving away from you. I also had someone calling out codes. Calling out code blue. Yeah. And they called out code blue twice. And then on another time, I was sleeping in one of the rooms. And it was actually one of those things that it was really emotional because you can really just sort of imagine what was happening. But you could hear a woman wailing down the hall. And as clear as can be, she says, "Please let me see him," as she's wailing. And so you can just imagine that, she's probably there wanting to see a loved one that's, in a very bad situation and potentially maybe not being able to see them. And so, I feel like that was probably more residual, but there was definitely intelligent responses and residual just very active at that location. So if you like hospitals, that's definitely one that I recommend come down checking out.
I mean, you think about what goes on in a hospital. You have every aspect of life in a hospital.
Yes.
And there's people that pass away that don't even know they passed away because either there were in accidents or, just even the heart attacks. We walking down the street one day and you just have a heart attack. All next thing you know, I mean, I'm just thinking about this, but next thing you know, you're walking around in the hospital and nobody's paying attention to you because nobody can see you. Yeah. I mean, who knows? But hospitals are awesome. The energy, it's weird because hospitals and theaters, because the emotions are so high in both of them. And you have, even though theaters aren't, it's all really acting, even though there's people that do pass away in theaters, but hospitals are from birth to death and everything in between.
Yeah, happy. You've got some of the most joyous moments of a birth to, some of the most heart-wrenching when it comes to a death. Funeral homes are the same way. And except you don't have that high and low as much there. You have more, it's more not negative, but, more sadness.
Well,
but
more stubborn or
Yeah, exactly. But that is a very good point, and one of the reasons why I really like hospitals, just because it's such a variety, and you just never know what you're going to get.
Yeah, and you talk to any nurse, and especially when they find out what we do,
Mm-hmm.
talk to any nurse, and they'll be, "I've got these stories." You know, they all have stories, and you
Yeah.
know, they're the ones that see the stuff. You
Mm-hmm.
know, it's like hospice workers. I'd love to sit down and
Yes.
talk to hospice workers about what they experience, because when my dad passed away, you know, I'm more. It's weird because my dad was passing away, and I'm more into the science, like what's happening right now, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And we were all sitting there, and we heard someone yelling, "Please help me, help me!" And we're like, "Should we go in the room and help that person? You know, we don't know. What do we do?" And so it might have been kind of rude, but we were like, "No, we're not going to help him." And not even 5 minutes later, somebody walks in with a gurney because they passed away. And we're like, did we hear him before or after? You know?
Right.
But yeah, hospitals are just crazy. I love hospitals. If I can investigate in a hospital, I definitely do it.
Well, and that's what's always interesting to me too, is whenever you actually talk to these nurses, the similarities that you hear from a lot of their stories is really interesting.
Yeah.
I've had several family members that have gone through hospice as well. And, there's kind of a playbook of just how the progression is.
Yeah.
And then talking to the nurses and stuff, and just some of the different things that they've experienced with it. It's really amazing and fascinating.
Yeah. You know, you can always tell if a person's about to go is if they're verbal, they'll say, I got to get ready. I got to go. I got to pack my bags. You know, they're either
Mm-hmm.
saying that they have to go on a trip,
Mm-hmm.
or they have, and you're like, no, you're not going anywhere. You're still here. And, or they say that, well, I was just talking to so and so, and that person's been, passed for years. And they're like, no, I just talked to them. And you're like,
Mm-hmm.
okay, maybe they have, because there's so
Yeah.
many times where we've heard it so many times where our loved ones come and visit us
Mm-hmm.
to help us transition. So,
Absolutely.
and me being the scientific part of it, I was actually sitting there looking around going, do I see any spirits? Because you don't know.
Mm-hmm. And they'll
It's,
tell you that too. Hospice will tell you, be careful what you say, because there are people, there are spiritual beings here
mm-hmm,
that they can hear and see and experience what you're experiencing. And then also, as far as the person goes, I think the hearing is one of the last things to go as well.
mm-hmm,
And I know that nurses and family and everything, they'll tell you whenever someone is on the verge of passing away to tell them it's okay
yeah,
to go on.
mm-hmm,
And so I feel they're definitely experiencing others that have come back to help them to transition on.
yeah, yeah,
I know, Dr. Sumner from Soul Sisters Paranormal. I don't
yeah,
know if you and her have talked about this, but she has some interesting stories about, when her Nana was in hospice, and some of the things that, they talked about and did. And if she's not shared that with you, then you definitely need to talk to
yeah.
her about that, because it's kind of similar to what you talked about.
Mm-hmm. Let's talk about Dr. Sumner for a minute.
Sure.
She is awesome. I know
Yes.
you guys do a lot of stuff together. I've
Yes.
seen videos of you guys together, and I've talked to her too, and obviously,
Mhm.
talk to each other. But I tell you what, she is great. Her team, Soul Sisters, they're one of the top investigators that I've seen.
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. Yeah. I just pulled a comment up there because we've got both her and James Edwards here in the chat room. And James used to work at the Kosciuszko funeral home there. It looks like he says in the 80s. And so Soul Sisters is actually getting ready to release their episode from the funeral home. I think it'll be maybe next week.
Oh, really?
So, yeah. I investigated that one. I highlighted it. I was actually, other than Southern Paranormal, I was the first team to be able to investigate in there, and highlighted them in episode 2 of season 2. And so went back last year, and I know Soul Sisters went back and got some really good stuff as well. So just a phenomenal location, and it's been really cool to see it grow and see what Donald and the late Doyle Goss has done over the last 2 years to really grow that location. So it's cool to have James here in the chat room talking about, his time there, and then also to be able to see what Dr. Sumner and her sister Dr. Jenny Sumner, will be releasing next week at the funeral home. So I love following them and what they do.
Yeah, I'm definitely going to look forward to seeing that.
Yeah, absolutely. So we'll wrap this up here in just a few minutes. Right. But I want you to tell people where they can find you and everything. And I just want to say I am actually representing 222 Paranormal. I know they've got some really great merch, and so you've got some links and stuff. And so I'll post all of that. I shared the link just a few minutes ago, and I'll share it again right now.
And
Facebook page.
I was going to put on my Ghost Biker Exploration shirt, but it's in the clothes hamper in the bottom. Like, I didn't want to pull it on and have it all wrinkly. And yeah, look at me, I'm wearing your shirt. Yeah. No.
You can't be a slouch when you're wearing a Ghost Biker
That's
shirt.
right. You got to represent.
That's right, and represent nice and.
But anyhow, yeah, 222paranormal.com. That's our main webpage, and we have a listen button on there. But really, anywhere you listen to podcasts, I've got some video on YouTube, but yeah. But mainly 222 Paranormal Podcast. Anywhere that you get your podcast from, we're on iHeartRadio. We're on everything, Google Play. We're not on Amazon yet. Amazon does have a new thing now where they're going to start playing podcasts, and I put in my request to be on there, but I don't think anybody's on there yet.
Okay.
But really anywhere, just type in any podcast format that you listen to, whether it's on your phone or iPhone or whatever, iTunes, all that. We're everywhere. Just look.
And you do lives and stuff. Do you do those on your 222 Paranormal page, like when you go to cemeteries and stuff like that?
Sometimes. I mean, I've dabbled in it. I'm going to try to get into it more now that I got the new camera and everything, and I'm going to try to start doing it more. But right now, the videos that are on there are pretty good, but not as good as yours.
Well, but yeah, I'll get your links and I'll put those in this page, and then we're going to take this and put it on YouTube after we go off here, and we'll release it as a premiere. Hopefully at some point I'm going to be live on both Facebook and YouTube at the same time. I'm trying to grow my YouTube channel, and everybody is just amazing here on Facebook and just so interactive. I know that I've been kind of watching the comments over here and trying to pull some of it up. I know that there's been a few questions, but I've tried to kind of pull those in if someone has had a question. So, I want to thank everyone that's tuned in and participated in the live chat. And again, we're going to try to do some of these on a weekly basis, and hope you'll come back, Joe, and talk to us.
And I want you back on my show. It's been a year.
It has.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I really want to thank you for inviting me to do this. I was kind of like, I don't know, because I don't like talking about myself, and I didn't know what we were going to talk about, but I'm so honored to have you ask me to be on this, and I want to thank you.
Well, thank you. It's been a pleasure, and the honor is mine, because I love being able to take my friends that are out doing things, have them on the show, talk about their experiences and what they're doing, because you are doing great things, Joe. And I really love the story behind 222 Paranormal and how you got started and everything. And so you just have a great approach, and you do really good things for the paranormal community. And when I say paranormal, I mean as a whole. So, so I appreciate you. And like I said, it's the honor is all mine. And, we'll be back next Thursday as well. And we'll be doing, I've got a really great guest, actually 2 guests that will be on. If you've heard me on the Horsefly Radio Chronicles with Julia and Philip Syracusa, they're actually going to be coming on my show and talking about their encounters that they had that they actually lived with for many, many years. They have a really great story to tell. So I'm really excited to kind of flip the script again and have someone who's used to doing a podcast show on my show and be my guest. So we've got that coming up next week and got some more events and stuff. We are going to try again to have Ryan Rush on probably next Saturday. Again, if you all have followed, you'll know that I had Facebook issues. And so this will be the 3rd time that he and I have tried to come on, and we've always had something. So hopefully this time it will work out, and we'll be having some, event announcements and more guest announcements. I will be having Dr. Sumner on soon. We're going to be talking about equipment and some of the different types of equipment that we use, some of the myths that are out there, and also, just some of the different things involving equipment. So got a lot of stuff coming up. And you have anything coming up, Joe, that you want to push? You said got
not really.
Good shows coming up.
Yeah, we got the really good one next week, or this coming up Sunday. Our shows come out at 2:22 on Sunday. And it's, like I said, it's with Haunted Toledo, talking about the first serial killer in Ohio. Pretty bad dude. So I think you'll like the show. Like I said, I love the people from Haunted Toledo because they preserve a lot of locations and preserve the memory of the paranormal, like you do. You do the same thing through your videos. And like you said, every small town has a story. And
That's right.
I love how you get out there and you find them.
Well, thank you. Thank you.
Anyway, thanks again for having me on. It was a blast, and hope we can do it again.
And again, thank you, everyone. Hope you have a great rest of the week, and I'll be in touch coming up soon with some more show information. So take care, everyone.